All right. And with that, we should be live. So, welcome everybody to episode 8, I believe, of our Call of Duty League podcast.
Sounds good.
The way it's been working out, we've had one before an event, one after an event, and we've just been alternating. So, it's kind of worked out fairly nice for us. As always, so I'm a co-host, Icon. We'll talk about my intros in a minute. Up top, we're joined by other co-host, Kingdom Soldier. And over to my right, we have our guest today is Katie Bedford. So, esports host, on-air personality for many games. Most of you probably know her from being the desk host for the 2019 CWL season. Most recently, she was at the Ishoni Esports Fort Worth Amateur Open. And then just last weekend, she was with the Washington Justice. So, Katie, welcome to our show.
Thank you for such a kind introduction. I've been kind of globe-trotting all around, but was super happy when you guys reached out. And obviously, I love watching Call of Duty. I love talking about Call of Duty. So you guys were like, do you want to do that? And I was like, sign me up. Let's go.
Well, cool. Yeah, welcome. I'll throw it over to Kingdom in just a second. Just for me, my intro is real quick. So essentially, we came up with this last week when we had Midnight on, but I don't know, it kind of sounded good and a lot of people ran with it. But I like to think of myself as Call of Duty's community coach. So essentially, I'll just take a competitive map, I'll break it down, I'll draw on screen, just kind of get people the idea of what's happening behind the scenes, why teams are doing what they're doing, why players are doing what they're doing, just because sometimes this game can be so hectic and so hard to follow that I figured I would slow it down a little bit. So that's what I do. You can find me on YouTube at Icon Nation. And with that, we'll welcome Kingdom. What's going on?
Not much. What's up, guys? Welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in again. It'll be on YouTube soon. And thank you, Katie, for being our guest today. So my name is Kingdom Soldier. I make videos on YouTube. I most recently was hired by G Fuel. I am not sponsored by them.
Let's go.
As a partnership manager, love my job. I just finished my first week Sunday, and it was amazing. I love my coworkers, and you guys have probably seen me tweet about it. So just thank all of you guys for words of encouragement, for telling me just to keep grinding about a month ago. And some people were telling me not to. And I'm just grateful for getting a job in esports, and I know it's just the beginning. So I'm looking forward to it. So Katie, something that we do on the show is we kind of start out the show with the first 5. And basically it's me asking you 5 questions, and we just want you to answer as quickly as you can.
I can't answer anything about why spawns happen the way they do. Take it up with you. Sorry.
All right. We may need to go to commercial break, Goalie, so that we can I can rewrite the 5 questions.
All right.
Okay, so these ones are going to be pretty easy for you. They're kind of about you to let us get to know you a little bit. And then there's a little game I want to play with you and Icon following this that kind of has to do more with the league specifically. Ready?
Yes.
Okay, this first one is going to be an easy one. Where did your Twitter handle come from, Worlds Bedford? Like how did you arrive at that?
Wow, that's a great question. And it actually cost 40,000 channel points on my stream to tell the Worlds Bedford story. So,
you can't tell it then.
It involves college and kind of the funny stories that occur when you are a young freshman in college. But I can't give away all my secrets because then no one will use it. I'm sorry.
No, now a lot of people hopefully are going to go and sit in your chat for as long as possible.
But it is a really good story. I'll give you guys that. It is a really good story.
Are you going to tell everybody when you're going to tell it? Or the minute someone gives you those channel points, are you going to tell it immediately on stream?
I've told it to a couple people, but usually they redeem it. And then when people redeem it, I get as many of them into a room in my Discord, and I'll put the stream on pause so they can't hear us. And then I will tell the story. And then I have the people who redeemed it react to chat, be like, oh my gosh, this is what I thought or whatever, without giving away details.
Oh, that's awesome.
But
okay.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like a fun little community thing to get in on the quasi-embarrassing story of how I got Worlds Bedford as my dad.
I'm actually happy I asked that. That was a good answer. Okay, so I want you to go back to before you were a politician. You were in politics, I'll say. And everything I've read talks about, it starts there and then it goes to now. Like it starts at politics and goes to now. What was before politics? Who was Katie before that? And what would that person think of who you've become today?
That's a great question. So before that was college. I got a finance major that I did absolutely nothing with. So now I just have a very pretty piece of paper. But I think college me, I've been a gamer my whole entire life, and it's really been my passion. So I think if college me could see me now, she would probably cry because she would be so happy that I found my way into the industry that back then I never thought I would have a skill set to be involved in. So I think she'd be pretty proud, and not that I'm doing everything perfect, but you know, I'm working my way through it all. So
awesome. Okay, so I found some videos of you and this thing called like the Bedford like classic McDonald's
yes,
order.
yes.
So I want to know, because I didn't agree with all of your judgments.
Most people don't, to be fair. Most people don't.
But I liked your Taco Time judge, or the Taco Bell judgments.
Mm-hmm.
I think the little Doritos Locos tacos, I think they're good food. It's just I don't know how they make them, but I like the taste. And so
they don't really taste like Doritos, but they're good tacos.
No, exactly. They're just, I mean, and you can't fight with a good taco.
Big facts.
So my question though is, where did that order come from, and what makes it so great?
So the order came from college, actually. So I grew up with McDonald's in Washington State, and I don't experiment a lot. So kind of when I found my place growing up, that's just what I stuck with. And then in college, you know, poor college kid, whatever, you could just get so much at McDonald's, and I could never decide between just a burger or just chicken nuggets because I love them both. So I just did the dollar menu because I could get everything I wanted, and I could get my small chicken nuggets, my McDouble, my small fry, and my strawberry smoothie, and it would be like $7, and it was just enough food. And I got like, I love fruity stuff, so I got my strawberry smoothie, and then I would also get my chicken nuggets and my burger and my fries. So it was kind of just the perfect little combo self-created meal. And I've stuck with it ever since for literally like 6 or 7 years or something, because it's just so good. Like, why change?
So have you ever thought about switching, like at McDonald's?
Fun fact, I have never had any other burger at a McDonald's except the McDouble. That's the only one I've ever had. So I don't even know. And I feel like I'd be cheating on a long-term relationship if I have a McDouble.
That could be content though, you know? I mean,
it could. No, you're right. Like,
I've
never had a Big Mac or like any of that stuff. So I think I should. I think I should apologize to the Bedford, which is the name of my meal, and try like a Big Mac or something.
The Bedford.
It's vain and I don't care, all right?
I think it's awesome. Okay, so of late, ever since, you know, things changed for you all of a sudden, you like immediately went to streaming a lot more. I think I was telling you kind of before we got on the show is that there was one day where I would watch your stream in the morning, and then I kind of left the house, grabbed my kids from school, all that kind of stuff, and then came back and my computer was still running your stream, and I was like, wow. It looks like you're having a lot of fun. You were playing with Study and his boys at the time, I think. It looks like you're having a lot of fun. Like, how do you fit streaming? Because it's not like you haven't had opportunities post the CWL. Like you've done other events and LANs, and you're working with other teams and other leagues. And so how do you fit streaming into your life? Like, how is it fit in?
So originally it was funny when I first started streaming in the off season, it was because the one critique I'd received was, hey, like we love what you're doing, but you just need to deepen your game knowledge for next season. So that was one of the reasons I started streaming, and particularly playing wagers with Study, because obviously playing with him, and he's a phenomenal coach and a very dear friend of mine. So I was able to learn the game much better. And obviously that didn't pan out the way I thought it was going to, but then streaming kind of just became my 9 to 5 because I didn't have a 9 to 5 anymore. So realistically, my days, I write for CDL, but I do my freelance gigs when I have them, but I treat streaming as my job. So I'll wake up in the morning, I go to the gym, I come back, I get ready, and I do my stream all day. except for, of course, when I'm traveling for something. But I've just started to treat it as that job. Now, if an opportunity comes up where I'm not able to do that, then I want to keep streaming, of course, but I'll have to manage my time differently. But right now, I just have a ton of time during the day to do it, which is awesome.
That's awesome. I'm imagining that your community is growing.
Oh yeah. I love it. I've been blown away. I genuinely could not believe how awesome the community has been. So hopefully trying to keep it growing and bring more people in, but it's been really great. There's some super, super cool people on Twitch, and I'm glad I get to meet them.
That's awesome. I mentioned your article that you did on Faze. I think it was maybe before their homestead.
Yeah, I did it. It went up the Thursday before CDL Atlanta.
Yeah, and I'll just admit I was impressed. I hadn't read your writing before then.
Oh, well,
and I kind of was like, okay, wait a minute. She's an exceptional writer. Like, I read good articles, but this was like, and I'm not trying to flatter you, I'm just being honest. It was just very, very, it kept me engaged. I got all the information I wanted, everything you want in an article about a team. And I talked about it in a video. I made a whole video based on some of the things you said in your article in the interview, and really drilling down on them stopping Envoy. And that was kind of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, because you're an exceptional writer, how did you transition from writing? Now, I've heard it just kind of happened. Somebody offered you a job kind of deal. But how did you personally transition from writing to being on-air talent for the CWL?
I mean, that's a phenomenal question, right? So I had some experience with it beforehand, but it really was, as you said, it was really one of those situations where someone looked at me and was like, hey, I think you would do well on camera. Do you want to try something on camera? Sure. And I was like, I don't see a creepy leather couch here, so I trust this. Like, yes, totally. And I was super awkward though at first. Like, I was so uncomfortable, so stiff. And I mean, there's very few people who are off the rip, very natural on camera. So it was a rough start. But as you said, it was really just someone looking at me and being like, hey, you're loud, you're bubbly, you talk a lot. I bet that would work well on camera. And then when I started doing the daily walkthrough, my newsletter that kind of led me into the esports scene, I had already had kind of some of that experience being on air. And then I actually did tier 3 Overwatch work with Broadcast GG back in the day. So that kind of helped as well, at least in the esports scene. So it was a little bit here and there, but I was fairly comfortable being on camera by the time I did CWL. I just had never desk hosted esports before.
That is, that's brave of you to leap onto the screen like that. I think, were you nervous the first time you knew you were going to be broadcast to 40,000, 50,000 people?
So I was nervous in the sense, like, are you talking about like what, CWL Vegas, for example? Like, So I was nervous because it was live and the work I was used to doing was in studios. So there was no live audience. Right. I was also obviously very nervous because while I had done about 3 months of prep on the players and the teams and whatever, I was still so green and the community didn't know me. And realistically, a lot of across the board, everyone told me that the community in Call of Duty was going to be vicious. And they weren't. They were skeptical of me, understandably, because they were like, who is she and where'd she come from? But honestly, Vegas was rough. I was okay, I would say, but they were incredibly encouraging and very warm to me in their critiques after the fact. So thankfully, I avoided whatever that was that people said maybe they can be a little mean. But yeah, I was so nervous on the opening desk segment at Vegas that I forgot Benson's name. And you can go back and watch it because I think I introduced Nameless and I introduced Miles. And then it gets to Benson and I look at him because he's on my left. And I was like, and our resident Ginger and Pac-Man.
At least you're covered.
Right. I like when I asked him the first question, I was like, so Ben, How are you doing, Ben? I was like, I remember your name. I swear to God. But that was kind of my brain fart moment when I was super, super stressed out on the opening dust segment.
That's awesome. I mean, and I think it's cool because you've made some friendships out of it that I'm sure will last a lifetime. And some of the things you're even involved with now, I'm sure, were formed from some of those relationships that you built during your time in the CWL. It's interesting as we went into franchising with all the changes. Of course, people are going to be in an uproar. They're going to, well, this is just different. Where is Katie? I was in an uproar a little bit when I didn't see TP after week 1, because I just liked what he did on the desk. I liked his analyzing. And so I was like, where's TP? Okay, wait, he'll be back for Atlanta. Okay, no, he'll be back for LA. All right, well, TP's just not going to come back. I just had to accept it. And then I heard Rich say on Puckett's podcast that he is a mainstay. Like, he's there for pretty much every event. And I was like, okay. But then I also listened to Rich analyze on that podcast. And I was like, okay, who he is on set is not 100%. We don't get to see all of Rich. And Maven has said the same thing about himself. Like, he's Maven and he's loud and he lets Joe do a lot of the analyzing, but he knows the game. Like, Maven isn't, he's not clueless. And I think sometimes people have gotten that kind of, well, he doesn't know. And so I'm very happy for you. And it sounds like things are moving in the right direction. So I want to slightly transition before I hand it over to Icon to talk about the event. And I kind of want to do something we haven't done before. And it's only because we're in this weird, what seems like a ROSTERMANIA period. Between now and Dallas, there's a 2-week window, or 3 weeks, you can call it, window, where there's no event in between like we're used to. And then we have the kind of the mid-season sprint after Chicago. And so a lot of teams right now going into LA knew we need to get on the board, and OGLA was like able to get on the board.
Thank God.
It would have been tragic. I mean, unfortunately, I don't know how much that's going to do for them to prevent them from moving people around, but New York needed to do a lot better. They needed to show up this weekend. Seattle needed to show up this weekend. There's Lag needed to show up this weekend. I mean, they took one of the biggest risks of any team. It seemed like maybe it was going to pay off, and then it just fizzled. And unfortunately, they performed, I think, maybe even a little lower than they had in previous, because at least they got one in Minnesota. But so I want to ask the both of you. I'm gonna play a little game, and we'll call it "Who's Gonna Stay and Who's Gonna Go."
Ooh.
And so
spicy game.
Basically, I'm gonna look at 5 teams, and it's probably predictable what teams they are. And I'm going to give you guys the name of the team, and I may give you a couple of people and make you pick, or I'll let you tell me who's going to stay on the team, who's going to leave the team. You guys can pull up the rosters if you need to, because I know they literally just changed before this event. But I'll give you guys the teams, and then I'll kind of switch off between the two of you and let you guys tell me who's going to stay on the team. And chat, you can play this game as well. Who's going to stay on the team and who's going to go, who's going to leave the team. And the first team we're going to start with is OGLA. And with OGLA, because they have not made a change, I just want you guys to pick one person that is for sure going to stay and one person that you think is going to go off of that roster. And I'm going to be nice to you, Katie, and I'm going to let Icon start.
I'll go first, just in case you need a second or so. Honestly, I know that this isn't in the rules, but I don't really know if I would do anything. But if I had to pick, I think Slasher has to stay. He had like a 1.3 over the weekend. He played so well. He just fried from the AR position. So I think Slasher has to stay. Now, there are other people that you could also take from there. If I had to pick somebody to go, I mean, I feel like it just comes down to JCap. Like, I don't know. I don't like, I don't.
You're trying not to say it.
I am. Like, I feel bad because, like, you've heard on a couple different shows that a 0.8 from JCap is a lot different than a 0.8 from Dashy or somebody like that, because he's just doing so much behind the scenes and he's doing so much objective work and stuff like that. So if I had to pick two, I guess Slasher has to stay and JCap has to go. But the way that they played, I just felt like we got to see a little bit of a development from OGLA, and I don't think I would really want to mess with that right now.
Okay.
So that's what I would go with.
Okay. Katie?
Okay, so this isn't ideal because I was essentially going to say exactly the same thing. Like, no, deadass, seriously, like Slasher stays and Cap goes. And I hate saying that because Jordan is a good friend of mine. And I absolutely love him, but that's what's going to happen. Like, realistically, TJ was playing horrifically until the CDL LA event. He was playing far worse than Cap, but if anyone's going to get scapegoated, it's going to be Cap. And TJ performed much better in CDL LA. But no, Slasher is your mainstay. You absolutely keep him. He's your team captain now that he's back on main AR. That's his comfort zone, and it's showing. I mean, they closed out their 3-0 over Minnesota. He was 24-10 on the domination. So he looks phenomenal now. So you absolutely keep Slasher. And I don't think they should make a change either. You're seeing strides. Things are going in the right direction. But if you're going to make a change, I would 99% sure it's going to be Cap.
So, and just for follow up, it sounds like both of you are saying that because they at least showed us something this weekend, you would let them give it another go as that roster.
Well,
I just because I really do look at them like how I looked at 100 Thieves last year, and maybe unfortunately what's going to happen is that they do end up doing that roster change and things really blossom. But we saw them 2-0 on day one, and it's all like dumb mistakes that they're making when they lose things though. Like when they threw away the hard point in the S&D against Gorillas. They threw them away to be 0-2 on that first series. They consistently make these very silly mistakes. And that's a team of so much talent and so much intelligence that I just refuse to believe that will continue to be a problem.
Agreed. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to add that not only that, but I mean, they 3-0'd Minnesota on day one. So I don't know if that's something that you really want to mess with. I mean, it's the first time that they've really performed, but beating a team like Minnesota 3-0, I just feel like it's in there. They just have to work on the consistency and get it out. Yeah,
just keep polishing. And I would give them at least another event, one event at least.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, if they don't get more than 10 points at the next event, they're almost guaranteed to be down there towards the bottom for the duration of the season. Like because
they're barely in the top 8 now for the cutoff for playoffs.
Yeah,
tied for 8.
And and I think we talked about the way playoffs work. And Katie, you may be able to. Every single person, even Chance, when he was on here, was like, I don't know for sure. But Goalie sent us a link during the show, and he'll probably send another one because I'm asking about it. But it sounds like the top 4 make it for sure, and then the next 4 fight for the wild card, and the last 4 are out.
Yes. So you have 4 that are guaranteed. You have 4 that play for the 2 wildcard slots going into champs or the end of the year. I don't know if they're calling it champs anymore. But you'll have those 8 teams for playoffs, and then 2 from the wildcards will be eliminated. And then you have, or whoever, 2 of them will be eliminated. And then those 6 will move on to champs, where the bottom 4 of the 12 don't make it at all.
Can you imagine those wildcard matches? Because I think they're single elim.
It's gonna be great.
It will be.
I care about that. I'm probably gonna be screaming. It's gonna be horrible. I can't wait though.
Well, I would imagine, and I'm hoping that if they don't somehow make a gigantic, miraculous turnaround and make it to the top 4, I'm hoping Seattle is one of those teams. Our hometown
I know.
team.
Well, look, my guys. They're my guys. They're my hometown
Repping
team.
the surge.
I know they can do it. But. Yeah, we gotta get a little more out of them.
Let's talk about Seattle. We've got Pander and we've got Enable. Who stays and who goes? We'll start with you, Katie.
Ooh, so I have.
Or you can name somebody else.
Yeah, so I have not been able to watch all of the series from the LA event. I'm just getting into the 6th series from Saturday, so I've seen a little bit of Pander, but not all of what he did over the weekend. I don't necessarily agree with benching Enable in the first place. But at this point, I would probably imagine that Enable goes, just based on other things I know about the situation and the players and whatever. I would imagine that Pander is going to probably stay around.
Okay. Go ahead, Icon.
Yeah, I'll say first thing, Seattle, whatever you do, don't touch Octane by all means. Just please don't even look at him. Just leave Octane doing what he's doing, because I mean the man is just playing out of his mind. But other than that, I agree. I don't think that Enable should have been moved to begin with. I just feel like it was so early on, and but
they played 4 series.
Yeah, exactly. And like you've kind of heard a couple times before, is that perhaps that was the wake up call that he needed, right? Maybe that's what he needed to get back on and grind the way that he has before.
Yeah.
But honestly, I know that they didn't perform this weekend the way that they wanted to. They had a 3-0 over LAG, but I would just like to see them stay put. I feel like there's so much prisoner of the moment happening right now where everybody wants to make changes and everybody wants to make moves. I feel like this team is, I mean, Pander played well. He was close to like a 1.0 all weekend. If it's anything, Karma had like a 0.8. So,
so let me play devil's advocate. Can this team beat any of the top 4 with some level of consistency at all?
With consistency, not right now. Could they on a good day when they're feeling themselves? Absolutely. But with consistency, no.
So,
yeah, no way.
So that means as the GM, you're kind of putting yourself in a position of I hope. You know what I'm saying? So I can see what you guys said is like, no Enable shouldn't have been moved. I think somebody should have sat him down and said, look, bro, you've admitted publicly you're not grinding this game like you should if it was your job. Now, in the NBA, not everyone's going to do what LeBron does to prepare their body and to prepare themselves physically. If they want to be a great player, they probably should. But some people are going to play exceptionally well, and they're not going to work out as much as he does. They're not going to put as much into their fitness and their health and their diet. And I feel like in the league, there is a base level of commitment that you should show to getting better at the game. And these are the struggles we've had in the past with the Optic dynasties and rosters that are storied. And the Optic guys all admitted, I mean, Scump was very honest on the hunt. He was like, hey, we underestimated teams. We were so focused on Faze. We didn't pay any attention to any of these other teams we had to play. And it bit us in the butt, you know? And I think if Enable wasn't willing to, whether it's because his team wasn't performing, he wasn't playing with who he wanted to play with, he wasn't in a team house, he wasn't in an environment where it was required to show up every day, and he was on one of those teams that said, you don't have to move this year, I don't know if they had a choice. And that's kind of what, you know, where when I look at the situation, I don't know if Seattle, I think they were like, let's just take a risk. We got a guy here that's been grinding the game. He's engaged. He wants this level of, you know, commitment and solid kind of career in his life right now, probably. Like, let's give him a chance and see what happens if he steps up. And I think it was a chance. I don't think it was permanent. So both of your guys' answers. Go ahead, Katie.
Sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. I think it's a lot of many different things. And Enable mentioned as much after he was benched that he was like, yeah, you know, I wasn't trying the way I should have been. However, he did also allude to the fact that he alluded that no one necessarily sat him down and said, if you don't get your shit in gear, we're benching you. So would that have made him lit a fire under his ass? I don't know.
Right.
But there maybe that step may have been missed. But again, to your point too, without a pro league and with only these tournaments and not attending every one, you have to make massive decisions based off of very little actual actionable data. So yes, Seattle definitely took a risk on bringing in Pander. And it seems like, though, if you guys are saying that he did kind of pull out that 1.0 KD throughout the weekend, not that means everything, then I think they'll be able to do good things with him. But obviously, they did need someone who was going to be far more aggressive than the lineup that they currently had.
Well, and I guess I'll throw this out there for what it's worth. We've seen teams in the past that have offloaded specific members or brought people to their team because their star would be happier if that person was around. And I think, you know, everybody knows that I think somebody called Pander Octane's kindergarten buddy or something like his.
They're best friends. Yeah, they've been best friends for a long time.
And Octane is, for lack of a better terminology, that roster right now. He is Seattle. He's a top KD in the game, doing his job well. And we've seen this from him in the past where he was doing amazing, but his team couldn't get W's. And they definitely have the potential as a result of having him there. And I think chemistry is one of those things that if you can throw it in the pot, I'd go for it. So I kind of get what risk they were taking. All right, let's look at the next team. So Florida Mutineers. Pristini has a last-minute change and needed to deal with some personal matters and asked for some time. The team stepped up and said, "Okay." I still haven't heard how the rules work to where Pharaoh was able to be like loaned for, just one tournament. I don't know how much he got paid. I have no idea how that works because in the NBA you can pull someone from the D League, but because they're in the D League, and so now people are saying if Pharaoh doesn't stay on the roster because he's played in a tournament, he can't go to a challengers team or something. I don't remember how. It just seems very confusing. But I guess my question for you guys is, with this team, does Pristini come back? Or is he one of those people that's going to try to get traded to go somewhere else? We know he doesn't like living in Florida. Is he going to try to get traded to go somewhere else? I think he said he's moving to like Texas or something. I don't remember. But if Pristini is not happy just living there, which he's tweeted about a lot, and it's messing with his emotions and his ability to play at a high level, does he not come back to the roster? Or does someone else leave the roster and Pharaoh stays and Pristini comes back and Havoc or Mox or Skies or like who? I mean, Skies isn't going to go anywhere. I would hope not. Or Frosty, but like who stays in Florida? Like what's their five? And then because there's 6 people right now, who leaves?
Icon, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Man, ideally, I wish that team would just stay what it was before. Now, whatever Pristini's dealing with, we wish him the best. But I mean, it seems like I'm saying this with every team that I kind of just wish that they would just stay. I mean, we're in our 4th weekend, right? Like, just give it some time. And I know there's only so many, but if Pristini was back in that lineup, I mean, they almost won an event. So, I mean, it shows how good they can be at full strength when Pristini's there and they have their squad that they've been playing with for 3-4 months by now. But outside of that, I feel like Skies is definitely the one that's untouchable. But the rest of that roster, I mean, they've all had their moments, right? They all played well. Mox had like a 0.8 this weekend, which, I mean, it is what it is. If we really wanted to dive into the numbers, we could. But for me personally, I don't know. I hope that Pristini can come back because he's like the battery of that team. When he's there, he plays so fast. And when they're playing S&D, he always has those super exciting, he's S&D. He's always pushing. He's always playing super fast and getting on the other side of the map and gaining map position. And that's kind of what a team like that needs. So to take him out, that's really hard to replace. So if Pristini comes back, I think that they're going to be a top 4 or 5 team all year. But if they don't, it's hard to tell where they go from there.
Katie?
Okay, Icon, I think we're going to have some problems because I keep agreeing like with everything you're saying. And as you say it, I'm like, shit.
There goes. Yeah.
That too. No, I agree. I would really love to see Pristini stay with Florida. I think he's an excellent part of their team. Also the face of their team realistically. However, if we're going to base it off of mental health contributions or I guess detriments that are occurring for him living in Florida, then he cannot stay on that team if they want all their players in Florida. Like that sucks, but it is what it is at that point. If he simply can't live there, then he can't live there. And if he needs to be there to be on the team, then he has to go somewhere else. But I would love to see the team stay what it was because I think they had some consistency issues that they could smooth out. And once they were able to do those, they had a very high ceiling. But I guess if Pristini goes and you keep in Pharaoh, then it could definitely work. I mean, Pharaoh did, at least again from that one series that I saw so far from my VOD review, Pharaoh was frying. He was all over the map. Yeah, he was hyper aggressive. And so he would trade out well with Pristini because Pristini was also that hyper aggressive running around the map. But I would hope that it stays the same for a lot of reasons, for storylines with his brother and for many other things. But yeah, if he can't live in Florida and he needs to be in Florida, then he's not going to be on the Warriors.
Right. And that's kind of where things are right now, is like the team, they're one of the teams that said they wanted their players to be on location. Some teams said this year, some teams like Seattle said next year, we'll probably have people on site. And so, I think Pristini just, he took a risk, and it has not worked out so far. And honestly, I agree with, I guess, both of you guys since you keep agreeing. And someone in the chat said, Katie, you should just go first since you keep agreeing with Icon.
Dude, I know. Seriously, like, okay, I can do the like just take the opposite and argue to that. I can do that, but I just. Shit, man. We're on the same wavelength. We have the same brain. I completely agree with you.
Okay, so let's look at New York. That's an easy one. I think so. There's a couple of teams where I think there is a potential for. I don't even want to say it with New York because I really love the guys that are on that team, especially like Attach and Zuma. However, I think they're a team that's kind of. They don't know maybe what needs to change, and they may be one of these teams that makes an unexpected change in this ROSTERMANIA period. I think we'll see at least one where we're like, whoa, I didn't see Pristini going to this team, or something weird like that, where it'll just be added, like Enable goes somewhere. He'll go to some roster. He said he was already being hit up, so, you never know. But when it comes to New York, do you guys see Happy staying on the team? Is Zero coming back? What is New York going to do? And if they do bring back Zero and go to the original roster, is that enough for New York? And I will start with KT.
Ooh, yeah. I don't. Did Happy pop off at all this weekend? Because from what I saw so far, it was very subpar.
Very.
It didn't make the subliners happy.
Right. So if that is how his stat line was in the entirety, then I don't see why you keep him, because there was clearly no definitive improvement. I disagree with them taking Zero out from the get-go. I don't think that he was that initial problem that needed to be fixed. Right. So I don't think you keep Happy, no, but then they also just signed Mac. So we have to see what potentially happens.
What they're doing with that, yeah.
But I mean, realistically, within that team, you take a step back from Zero or Happy. There's been a few players on that team. Zuma's been great. Attaches has been great. But I have been so disappointed in how Donnie's been playing. Like, you look at how he was last year, and Splice did not win, no, but Donnie was phenomenal. And I'm waiting to see that temp now. And I keep looking at him and I'm like, I'm not used to seeing you consistently go negative and have a non-impact on the map. So I think there's a lot of issues with New York. And I don't necessarily know if just one shift is going to fix them. Not that I'm saying nuke it from orbit, but I don't really think Happy for Zero did much.
Well, Attach said when he was on our show a couple weeks ago, he said that they're not on the same page, and that's the number one thing that needs to change about this New York team is they need to be on the same page on the map. You look at Atlanta, you look at even a Chicago, if their minds are right. If Chicago's bothered by each other, they don't play their brand of Call of Duty. But Atlanta, the Rokkr are a team. Like Minnesota, you can get a 9-piece on them if you're selling them, and they will still play their brand of Call of Duty. Like you can't stop that team. Florida proved that actually in the last event. They kept fighting. Chicago put them up against the wall, and they just kept fighting. Oh, we'll reverse sweep you, And so I think that in this game, in Modern Warfare, it seems like, and that's why I think Rambo is a big win for a Dallas team that we'll talk about later, that nobody was in top 10 stats for their whole team. Nobody's in overall KD, but they won the event, and it was because And Rambo's that perfect guy, even though I know he didn't really change anything. They have a system. And if you follow the system, this game is if you stick to the system and be where you're supposed to be on the map, you'll have the best chance. And
teamwork makes the dream work, baby. Doesn't matter
there
if
you
you're
go.
getting outslayed.
And so that's my thing. Can Chicago regain from their lack of teamwork? Of course, because they're champions and they want to win, and they'll work together and they'll figure it out. And if Hex has to, he'll sit him down. But can New York do the same? And that's kind of the question: is can that roster, even if they put Mac in there, can they? Yeah, I see you shaking your head. Like, can that roster? Can Temp? Can Lamar? Can those guys get along in game and not just out of game? And it looks like you're saying no, Katie, but I guess I'll throw it over. Go ahead. You want to say something? Say it.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. Well, so I know that from last year too, like Temp and Accuracy are not best friends. They had problems last year. Obviously it seemed like they were doing a good effort of trying to smooth things over in the off season going into this season, but there's no better way to reopen old wounds than shit in the bed repeatedly at every single event you go to. And I think that there are in-game and out-of-game problems with New York. And it's like, yes, you have Zuma and Attach, and they are great. And people are friends with Accuracy or friends with Temp, but like they might be butting heads. And then you have performance issues that are making everything worse. And I don't know. I don't know how you fix that. I don't know what you do, but there's so many problems.
So would you even go as far as maybe, let's say you're in the upper room and that on a team like that? I mean, this is franchise time, and these guys aren't going to wait for CDL points and chalk the year. You know, These owners have proven already they're not doing that. They'll bench Akes, Lacefield. They don't care. Saints, like, it doesn't matter. And so my question is, would you even think for a team like that, you find a core three, probably attach Zuma and someone else, and then you maybe try to get 2 other players or something? Like, they've already got Mac, so I guess that's maybe a 4th. I think this could be a team that tries to bring in somebody that's not associated with their roster. Censor's dad is going to get a lot madder. But I honestly think they want to win, and not that Censor can't help them win, but I think they're starting to recognize that chemistry is number one. And even the way what's been happening this year with Censor, I don't know if it's built chemistry with his team. It looks like he's been helping them. He's been their biggest cheerleader, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if him playing in 8's lobbies and tweeting out, I'm going to get on this team, I'm going to play this year, I'm going to play this year, I don't know if that builds chemistry, because I know that him and Temp, again, they don't have the best relationship, you know, and so maybe Donnie's the one that should leave that roster. I don't know. Icon, what do you think?
I'm just going to reset this for a second, because I don't know, maybe I'm not the best for this segment, but I'm kind of like, so just listen.
You're going to say,
as long as you don't agree with me, you're good.
You're fine.
Good.
Yeah. So part of my IRL for the last 13 years, I've been a varsity coach. And I know that with teams like that, if you don't have culture, if you don't have consistency, you don't have anything. So I look back at what they did in London, and no, they didn't win the tournament, but they won 3-1 over Paris, and they almost beat London. Like, they showed that they can take maps off these teams that are consistently in the top 5 or top 6. So I didn't like that move to begin with, because now I don't know all of the internal discourse. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if people don't like playing with other people or whatever. But for me, I felt like they showed that they could be there. So when we're only 3-4 weekends into the inaugural season of the CDL, I just feel like it's too early. Like, they've shown that they can compete. They've shown that they can be there. So me, Happy obviously didn't work, right? I mean, I feel like you could pluck any SMG out of that amateur series and put them in there, and they could probably go 0.6 overall for the weekend. Yeah. So what they had before, I mean, Happy didn't work. Take him out, put 0 back in, and you just got to work on, you just got to have consistency. And that actually, when we had Attach on, that's exactly what he said. He said that we've shown that we can compete. Our biggest thing is we just have to do it repeatedly. We just have to do it more often.
Right.
So for me personally, do we take this guy? Do we sign this AM? Do we plug out these 3 people and put these two? No, just you've shown that you can compete. Just put your nose to the grindstone and just do it. So that, I don't know. That's how I feel about all of this stuff.
Oh, we can't hear
You're
you.
muted.
At least I can't.
I agree. I'll repeat.
There we go.
I agree with what you're saying. However, let me tell you the bracket that New York is going to be playing in next in Chicago. London, Atlanta, Chicago, and New York.
You're gonna get chokeslammed.
They started in a group this weekend. They started in a group with Faze. Like, this team is unfortunate. Like, I looked at their schedule when I knew Attach was coming on the show a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even ask him about this because they have to be looking. Like, if you look ahead, you're like, can we get some free? Can we be like the Rokkr and be on that side of the bracket one time? Like, can we? Like, honestly, and the Rokkr are an amazing team, but when you saw where they were going to be this weekend, it was like, okay, they're probably going to go to the semifinals minimum, based on the group that they're in.
Yeah, you got Lag, Seattle, and Optic. Like, you're chilling.
Yeah,
so to your point, let me just go ahead and counter that, because I also, when we prepared for this, I thought that there was an opening there for New York. And yeah, in Chicago, they don't have a great bracket, but I feel like outside of those top 3 teams, you could find brackets for any other team, or they're going to have 2 teams like that they're not able to beat. But if you look at Florida, they're in Group A with Toronto, Florida, and Minnesota. Is Minnesota the best in that group? Probably, but they're probably
get out.
Right. They can win that one. And then if you look at the weekend after that in Seattle, they're in Group A with Seattle, London, and LAG. So if you just pick out one of those tournaments, I mean, they're as Katie said, they're going to get choke slammed in Chicago. But after that, like, they've got a chance, right?
Well, I mean, and the challenge, though, is that if they get beat in Chicago, let's say they only get 10 points somehow, maybe they get none. They're now sitting still at 10, and they're like in dire straits. We've got to get to the semifinals for sure for the next 3 events. I said after Minnesota, I was like, yeah, Dallas lost, but I think Dallas is our second place team. Dallas right now secretly has the highest average placing in the CDL. Like, they've played in finals in every event they've played at. And so Dallas can literally get second behind Faze in Chicago for the whole year and might end up with the most CDL points if Faze and Chicago keep getting knocked out 3rd, 4th when they actually do get beat. And so this whole point system, if I'm New York, I don't know what to do, but I've got to do something. I've got to have a come to Jesus with my team, I guess, and be like, hey, look, guys, we got to get it together.
Well, I just feel like the top 7 teams are going to be in the top 7. And then I feel in that 8th place, OGLA, the way that they performed this weekend, they're probably about to play a lot better, right? I feel like the top 8 teams are probably already set. So if you're New York, are you going to make 8,000 changes and just rip your culture apart? Or are you just going to stick with the squad that you had that showed that they can compete?
I mean, you might. Katie's trying to talk.
No, sorry. I want to say this before we get too far away from Dallas.
Go ahead.
I really was happy that you brought up Dallas. So something that you can kind of look at too with New York, it's like, yes, they're getting the short end of the stick when it comes to a lot of their groups, but better competition should make you better.
Preach.
Like, look at Dallas. Dallas had such a brutal road when they were going against Atlanta, and they had to play Chicago 3 times between Minnesota and London. And you watched them lose and get better and better and better each time they lost. And then you look at New York, and I'm not seeing that. And I don't know if they're not taking advantage of that opportunity, or if team vibes and chemistry and things out of game are preventing them. Icon, kind of as you were touching on, like, culture of a team and everything else is preventing them from improving from that better competition. But that's what you would look at. You would expect them to be improving just by virtue of playing some of the best teams and picking up on what they're doing, and they're not. You
would, if you put these rosters before we saw anybody play this game, you put New York and Dallas in the same lineup, your prediction, you might wonder who's going to win. because, well, it's the same thing everybody was saying at the beginning. Well, Ilya and Shotzi don't have a lot of experience and they're new. And so it's going to take time for them to get their feet wet. You've got experienced veterans on New York. They're all going to fry, blah, blah, blah. And you're right. They just haven't. And I get what you're saying, Icon, is that it's just too early. Like, why are we talking about trades at all? However, these teams also have salaries. So at some point, if your season is chalked, it's chalked, and maybe you actually want to just lower your salaries so that you can save some money because you're not going to champs. I mean, let's take a chance. Let's empty the bench, so to speak. Like, I believed that going into this weekend, OGLA, Optic, Lag, those three teams specifically, and maybe Seattle, but those three, if they didn't land semifinals or higher, it's a guaranteed change, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. The last team we're going to talk about before we go to break, of course, is Lag. They brought in 3 new people. I'm pretty sure, and I'm going to let you tell us, Icon, I'm pretty sure their KDs were
terrible,
like really, really bad. They somehow picked up those couple of maps, but then it was just not a fun weekend for them.
I think overall, it was like Blast had an overall 0.76 and Vivid and Spark both had a 0.71. I believe Desi was like a 0.98 and Aqua was something. I don't know what Aqua was.
So Aqua and Decimate, I mean, I think we can all agree, like, I don't know why that team would put them anywhere. But what happens? We've got a roster of 5, 6, 8 people. Who's on this team? Like, what happens with Aches and Lace? And like, are they already on the roster block to go somewhere else? Is Aches thinking about his coaching career? Like, what is happening? Like, because I know that's mean. I love Pat. Like, we've had him on the show in the past. Great guy. One of the smartest Call of Duty players that exists. And the reason and he's the best finesser in our business when it comes to getting on teams and being a starter. But something happened where that's not the case anymore. And honestly, you could be writing a new chapter to his life. Like when Theory all of a sudden didn't have a team anymore after like winning the first 2 events in World War II. Like, what is going to happen to Pat, and who stays? Like, let's say out of those 3 guys, you guys tell me, out of Lace, Saints, and Aches, who stays and who goes on LAG?
I mean, in terms of being a part of the franchise in some capacity, definitely Aches. But when it comes down to him and his rather abysmal performance, it's his own fault. Look at what Enable admitted about himself not trying and times that by 5 for Aches. He's not a bad player. He's just not trying. When was the last time you saw Aches in 10s? Think of one time. There's not a single time that he's been in 10. He's not been grinding. He doesn't have days worth of time into this game. I don't know how much time he has, but like, he doesn't have a presence. It's very clear that he hasn't been putting in that work, and it has reflected in his performance. When he cares, like look at last year, when he cares, his crappy Envy team 3-0s Optic and he goes positive across the board and gets doubles and triples and makes plays. And when he doesn't care, he has an average KD of 0.67 in Modern Warfare and is a burger. If he cares, he'll stick around. And honestly, that's his decision to make. And whatever he decides to do, obviously, is up to him. But it frustrates me when I see people like that, because I'm like, I know what you are still capable of. And if you don't care, then what are you doing? And if you do care, then get your ass in gear and work for it.
Lag may need to hire you for motivational intervention.
There you go. Get people going.
Give me up, guys. I got you.
Well, like the real deal is, let's sit these 8 guys down and say, look, we can only play 5 of you. And we're going to base some of that on commitment and drive and desire. Like, and that looks like something, like you said, that manifests itself as streaming and grinding and meeting with coaches, watching VODs, all that kind of stuff. Like, commitment level is so important. I will pass it to Icon. I agree with kind of I agree with your sentiment there.
I don't have much here for LAG. I think you easily could have just taken out Aches and put in Blast, and they probably would have beat OGLA, right? I mean, they got reverse swept. They would have had all momentum with a better roster. If you just make one player change there, but Spart had a 0.7 all weekend and Vivid had a 0.7, and they just didn't play well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Some of these teams just look like a train wreck to me. When we had Midnight on last weekend, she talked about the culture and the consistency and how those guys just enter their room and they just grind. And day after day, they're just in there. They're not saying anything. They're just in there grinding. And then you look at LAG and there's 3 players here, 3 players there. And I don't know. It just feels like a train wreck to me. And I just feel like maybe Aches was brought into that team just because they needed an identity, right? If you have 2 Los Angeles franchises and you have obviously the Optic one, and well, what's going to bring a storyline to LAG? Maybe that was Aches, right? Maybe that was their play.
Yeah. Aches was brought in because he could bring other players with him. This is finesse.com. Aches is, hey, sign me. I got Saints and Lace. Like, you need a roster. These guys have won with me. We beat Optic. It's like, just sign me. I've got these dudes that will come and play with me. Saints is extremely talented. He's the one thing where I'm like, why? And people are saying he may have benched himself, like on the podcast, and Abel was talking about it. But I'm like, but why?
That was like a rumor, though. Was that ever actually confirmed? I don't.
Well, no, because is he that loyal to Pat? Like, I don't. Where would that come from? Like,
no, that doesn't make any sense.
That's what I'm saying.
I would also say, like, in terms of their performance this weekend, we do have to take into account that all 3 of those players, Blast, Vivid, and Spart, they had not been playing with Decimate and Aqua. They did not have. They had like a week-ish of time to practice, and Blast had to catch up and respawn. And when I talked with Bevels for the LA article that came out before the event, when I talked with Bevels, he said that if they were going to struggle anywhere, it was very clearly going to show in their respawn modes. So their hard points and their dominations, because the team doesn't have synergy yet. They don't have kind of that team chem to be able to know each other's habits and everything else. So I do want to give them a little bit more time, see what happens in these 3 weeks when they can consistently practice. And to that note, Bevels also said it, and I agree because you could see it. They weren't practicing, or their practice was garbage on lag. And I want to see what they can do when they put in that time, they put in that effort. I don't care how nice the weather is in LA, people. I do not care. Go sit in that room in front of your monitor and practice. And if they do that, then I think you'll see great strides in that team by the time Dallas comes around.
Will Aches start in the CDL again?
If he cares.
Icon.
To me, you move him to like a GM role. I think if he wants to bring in players, I mean, that's a place where he could do so. But I don't see him. I mean, his stats have consistently been pretty bad so far to start the year. I don't know. I think he was the one that deserved to be replaced. So
I agree. And he probably would be a great analyst, whoever said that in the chat. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the event before we end the show. Thank you guys for sticking around. Great conversation about ROSTERMANIA. We could probably make a whole little separate video on that. A lot of topics, a lot of teams. And I'm surprised, and I would not be surprised if one of the teams we did not talk about made some type of a change. Well, you talked about London earlier, Katie, that
I was about to be like, London.
with Rated. So we'll see what happens. We will be back, guys, on the other side of 4 minutes. We'll see you guys on the other side.
All right, everybody, welcome back from our quick 4-minute break. We're going to go ahead. We're going to dive a little bit into the event now. So first thing I'll do is I'll just recap real quick how Group A went, and then I'll just throw it over to Kingdom and Katie, and maybe you guys can tell us like what your biggest surprise was, who you were most impressed with, if there were any upsets, stuff like that. So as we go ahead and we look at Group A, so we started with Minnesota had a 3-1 victory over Seattle, and then OGLA had that comeback over LAG. So those two teams went ahead and met in the winners final for Group A, which OGLA won 3-0, which I was super impressed with. That is not necessarily something that I was not anticipating that at all. I guess we kind of already answered one of those questions. But anyways, in the losers bracket, Seattle beat LAG 3-0, which again, after LAG had such a good performance against OGLA, even though they lost, I was a little bit shocked by that. And then Minnesota beat them 3-0. So the team that went out in the winners was OGLA, and then the losers was Minnesota. So those are the two teams that made it out. So throwing it over to you guys, surprises, upsets, what was most exciting, anything like that? What do you got? We'll go with Kingdom.
So for me, I wasn't surprised. I think you and I both, and on everybody said that OGLA at some point was going to wake up. At some point, they were going to show up and show us that they, on paper, have one of the best rosters in this league. The only exception on that team, maybe, is Cap, but he serves a role also. So it's not like he's bad. It's just that the rest of that team is, I mean, you would never see a single one of those players on the bench this whole year. They're all starters. They're all great. When you guys were talking about who you'd keep on OGLA, I was like, I would try to keep Dashy, it looks like that's what OGLA did in the preseason, was try to keep Dashy and Tej and not lose them to the Huntsmen or whoever else. I wasn't surprised by that. I'm glad Minnesota got the W's they got. I was shocked, I guess, a little bit that they were beat by OGLA, but I knew that Minnesota was going to make it out. If they didn't, that would have been a shock. Like if Minnesota would have not made it out of this group, if somehow Seattle would have pulled out that upset, it would have been interesting. And so I feel sorry for Seattle, my team. They lost to the same team twice again. And I know that has to hurt for them to like get beat first round, make it to second round, and get beat by that same team that beat you first round. You can't even really judge yourself as a team if you keep playing the same teams every event. Like that can't be fun. At least they got the W against Lag, which was expected. If they would have lost that, it would have been, their team would have been in trouble. Like, chalked. Yeah. I was gonna say that, but it's hard to say that with Octane and those guys on there. But they would have had to make some deep changes. So I think for this group, these were all good matches. I'll be blatantly honest. I wasn't watching any of them like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? On the edge of my seat. I wanted Minnesota to beat OGLA because I believe that this was an event for Minnesota to prove something, which I think they did. I think they did a good job of that. So yeah, for me, Group A was, I mean, it almost went kind of scripted. These are the two teams that I had coming out.
I was surprised because when I initially looked at Group A, I thought I would see Minnesota and Seattle come out of it. And not because I didn't think Optic could, but because I didn't think they would get it together, I guess. Because I just kept consistently seeing them be discombobulated and throwing things away, which was so frustrating. But I looked at Seattle, and there was just something about bringing Pander in, and I saw some of their scrims with Pander and kind of heard the chit chat going on about how the team was doing. And I just expected more out of them. I expected them to get their shit together a little bit more than they did. Right. And Octane was Octane. He did in, what was the first match that we watched with them against Minnesota? He did have a little bit of a slower series there, it felt like, but I expected them to make more strides than they did, and so I was disappointed in how Seattle played. And I guess on that flip note, then I was also surprised that Optic was able to show up against Minnesota after they almost threw it away. It seemed like they were really trying to just like give a dub to Gorillas, and I'm glad they didn't. But I guess when I look at Optic, I guess I'm surprised that it was not Minnesota and Seattle, that it was Minnesota and Optic on day one.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. I think going with my predictions, I thought that Minnesota and OGLA would be the two teams that got out. I just didn't expect OGLA to make it out of the winners. That was one of the biggest surprises for me of the weekend. I didn't expect OGLA to perform like that against Minnesota. As we hop over to Group B, just a quick recap. Atlanta beat Florida 3-0. This was a big storyline going in, like a rematch of the last finals, and I just wasn't buying it. I didn't think that, I don't know. I just didn't think that they could compete on the same level consistently with Atlanta. I mean, they even showed it in the finals of the last tournament that they couldn't compete there. The bottom half of that, so Dallas beat New York 3-1. I was kind of a little bit surprised that New York even took a map. I mean, it is what it is. I thought that would be a quick 3-0, but the winners of that, Atlanta beat Dallas 3-0. That's another one that's pretty shocking. I figured that and you know what? Thinking of that, I thought when Atlanta lost to Minnesota, and we'll talk about the semis and all that here in a bit, but that had to be a huge relief off of Dallas's shoulders, knowing that they didn't have to face Atlanta again, because I feel like there's a mental hurdle there whenever they play Atlanta or Chicago that they're going to have to overcome. So when Atlanta lost and got eliminated, I think that's probably when Dallas thought, okay, this is our tournament now. We can win this. So I don't know, just a little side note there. But in the losers bracket, Florida beat New York. Also, that's just a toss up for me, right? I wasn't really sure what was going to happen there. And then Dallas got out. So Atlanta got out in the winners, Dallas got out in the losers, and Atlanta and Dallas were the two teams to come out. So again, we'll do the same thing. Any surprises, upsets, anything like that, and we'll go this time to Katie.
I'm not honestly, when I look at all of these teams, I expected it to be Atlanta and Dallas.
Yeah.
I would say, as you guys said, for the Group A kind of scripted, this is how I feel about Group B. This essentially went to script. All I'll say in terms of Atlanta and Dallas is that was an extremely close 3-0. Like, just when you see those numbers, it does not tell the whole story. That first hard point was like 250 to 244 or something.
43, I think. 43.
Yeah, 43. Extremely close. The S&D, I think, was like 6-3 on Piccadilly or something. And that was because Simp went bonkers and had like 12 snipes or something ridiculous. But even that was closer than it appeared, because if Simp didn't pop off the way he did, then who knows what would have happened. Hook was having a great showing. So I think that series continued to show the improvements Dallas is making. And I mean, if you just look at a 3-0, you're like, wow, they got smoked, but they didn't get smoked.
Yeah, not in this game. That's not, I've learned real quick that in Modern Warfare, a 3-0 doesn't tell the whole story. Mm-hmm. You have to go look at it. And the fact that we've had, this is what the first finals where it didn't end in a 3-0. I mean, I guess the Chicago, I guess there's, well, no, that was still close. So for this bracket, I'll say that the matches were pretty close. I had no idea. I thought Florida had no chance only because of the change. I honestly think that if Pristini was still on the roster, I think they might have. I think Pristini's presence and what he does on the map would have at least, they maybe would have showed up a little bit more. Do you remember what the map count was against Dallas, Icon?
Dallas versus who?
Florida. For Florida.
In Group B?
Yeah, in Group B.
It was 3-0.
3-0, okay.
Yeah.
So I think that Florida gave it a try. They got past New York, which that's where New York needed to win. It was predictable that New York was going to that was my son Jacob. It was predictable that New York was going to lose to Dallas. That was predictable. I think New York should have beat Florida. When Katie earlier was talking about this roster and when are they gonna, we're not talking about a big team. This is a match where prove yourself that you belong in the conversation with an OGLA, with even a Seattle, where people are talking about Seattle has the potential to be a better team. Like, you can't get double bopped out of a tournament, and you're playing against a Florida team that has a substitute and one of their most storied and kind of branded players is not in the game. I think New York missed an opportunity there. I just really do. I was pulling for them. Since Pristini wasn't there, I was like, oh, I wouldn't mind if Florida lost. It was kind of like, I mean, I love Pristini and hope he, comes back. But Yeah, this side was predictable. I think, like Katie said, I knew that Dallas was going to probably lose to ATL. I do disagree with you, Icon, and we'll talk about it, I guess, when we get to semis and finals. I think Dallas would have been I think they're the same as Chicago. They just don't talk as much. Dallas would have really liked to have been able to beat Faze so that people stop this narrative that they're involved in where, yeah, they have the highest average placing. They've been in 2 finals. But nobody would put them above Chicago or Faze. Like, even though the only reason they have less points is because they didn't get 2 wins against those 2 teams in Minnesota. But they've gotten so much better in such a short amount of time. You're talking about Illy and Shotzi are horrible. They're the reason this team can't do anything. But really, the only thing this team struggled to do was beat 2 teams in league. And so I think they would have wanted to play Faze. I kind of, and Clayster kind of alluded to that, but I feel like this team wanted to prove something. Not to the point where Chicago only prepared for Faze and was paying so much attention to Faze and watching Faze's matches that they weren't preparing for Toronto and Minnesota and Florida, the teams they had to play. I don't think Dallas would do that. They're too smart. And I'm not saying that Chicago's not smart. But I think Clayster and Krim know the deal. They've been around the block, and
there's also the personality dynamic too.
I mean, I was trying not to go there, but the truth is the truth. Yeah.
I only bring that up specifically because when I was, I said it before, but when I was doing the Player Story series in the off season, those ghostwritten articles, when I interviewed Krim for he talked about kind of that mentality, and he doesn't have that mindset where he's just gonna relax and coast.
Never.
And no. I think having someone like Krim is so helpful to a team that's doing well if they listen to him. If they listen to him, to keep them on their toes and keep them saying, you know, we can lose to anyone, and always remember that. Not just we gotta, we'll see him in the grand finals. Like, psych, you didn't.
And that's, look, honestly, the best answer. I don't remember if it was Hook or Illy. I don't remember who said it, but they kept asking the Dallas guys, are you kind of happy that you didn't have to play Atlanta, or are you sad that they're not here? And one of them was like, and they said, like, Atlanta, everybody's saying that that you can't beat them, blah, blah, blah. And they were kind of, I think it was Hook. He was kind of like, I mean, well, they should have won so that they could play us. It's kind of like, I mean, what do you do as a team if everybody's complaining that you can't beat Chicago or Dallas? If they don't make it to the finals, there's nothing you can do. Like, and that Minnesota team was as hard of a finals as we've ever seen. So who knows what would have happened if Atlanta would have got there. Minnesota was the right team for the finals. They played almost best this weekend. You might argue that it's just that blunder, with OGLA. But I think, honestly, Minnesota played phenomenal. And so I think for that bracket, that, for Group B, Dallas and Faze, if they wouldn't have made it out, it would have been shocking. I think there's honestly a contention in our community, and I'll just say it for what it's worth. And it's not just the Huntsman fans. I think there's a part of our community that, for some crazy reason, Krim has become kind of a villain, and people almost want to see that team not succeed. It's like everybody wants the Rokkr to succeed. There's something about that team. There's something about that roster where people almost are anticipating their lack of success, but they just keep showing us, we got beat pretty bad in Minnesota. We got 6-0'd by Faze in Search. We showed up at the next event and got second. And the next event we showed up at, we won. And you're saying that these two guys are bad. What is going to happen when Illy and Shotzi are at top form? And Clayster said in an interview, we're going to make some of these teams look silly. And I'm like, you'd love to see it. It'd be a great storyline. If Dallas comes out and is the number 1 team that they were in scrims in the preseason, you might see Hastro retweet some stuff. You can go ahead, Icon. Sorry.
I mean, ultimately, when we had our very first podcast and we kind of talked about these teams, I broke down then that like the predictions that I were making was for that first weekend because I just thought it was too early for those younger players. And I said, even then, like if we're talking 2-3 months from now, eventually the more experience, the more time Shotzi and Illy are in that predicament, are in those and gaining that experience, that they're going to put it together, right? They're too talented to just be bad the entire season. And I think that we're starting to see a little bit of culmination there. But another thing that I'll say, and somebody said it in the chat, I think it was Randy said, even Scump said it on one of the interviews, like on the desk after their matches, that he's living rent free in Crim Six's head. I just feel like some of that stuff exists. I feel like, I don't know. Now, would they have beaten Atlanta? Maybe. I mean, they were playing really well. It definitely could have happened.
Call of Duty. Yeah.
They were playing great. I just feel like those are two hurdles that once they get over it, it'll no longer be a storyline anymore. I don't feel like, but going into any matchup with those two teams, with Chicago or Atlanta, that's probably something that people are going to be talking about. So
before we do semis and finals, can I ask you a question, Katie?
Yes.
Minnesota does not exist. There was no launch weekend. Dallas Empire have placed second and first out of 3 events. Where would you place them in comparison to Chicago and Atlanta if Minnesota specifically, that launch weekend where they lost to those two teams, did not happen or didn't exist? If our season started in London and that team has got a second and a first place, we've never seen Illy and Shotzi play bad, and we don't have that narrative. Just what's happened has happened. Where would you see them in contention with those two teams?
I would still put them as third.
Okay.
I would still put them as third because they did still lose to Chicago twice in London.
That's true.
And I just don't think the narrative changes a ton. I mean, people would probably be more positive and optimistic and less harsh on Dallas if Minnesota didn't happen. But I would still place them in the same space. They are the one team I love watching because you're just seeing such strides. Every time Dallas plays, you're like, wow, I have seen improvement in this series.
Yep.
But I would still put them exactly the same if Minnesota never happened.
They'd have to. Now, if they would have beat Faze this weekend, we might have a whole weird conversation. But they didn't. It didn't happen, and so that's part of this league. It's not guaranteed. We learned that when Chicago and Faze didn't meet each other. Sadness. Cry me.
Yeah, it was terrible.
We got to wait way too long for that to happen. Like 2 events now. It's just
for it to maybe happen.
To maybe, yep, that's it.
Well, they're in the same group, right?
Are they in the same group?
Yes, in Chicago.
I just wanted the grand finals, man. Like, come on.
Well, what if they knock Chicago into the losers bracket in Chicago? That's good. The storylines are going to be.
That crowd's going to be something.
The Dallas storylines are going to be good because, like Clayster said, we want to become the first, people to go back, the first champions to repeat because nobody's done that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny though. Our top 3 are top 3. This league has ironed out exactly as we said in the preseason, and it's kind of interesting to me. I actually want to mention that later, but go ahead, Icon. We can move into semis.
All right, yeah, I got a few little things about what you were talking about too, with like the rankings with those top 3 teams and stuff like that. But we go to the semis and the final. I thought one was definitely, way more exciting than the other. I think Dallas kind of took care of business against OGLA. I was excited to watch that just because the storylines that OGLA was, creating throughout the weekend, especially with their 3-0 win over Minnesota. So I was thinking, well, maybe something clicking and maybe they can, give Dallas a run for their money, but it didn't end up happening. Dallas won that 3-1 to move on to the final. And then the most exciting by far map, I think, not only map, but so the most exciting matchup of the entire season so far for me was Minnesota and Atlanta. It was just, I was texting my buddies at one point in time saying I got goosebumps just watching that play out and the way that it did.
I can't wait to watch that VOD. I can't wait.
You haven't watched that yet?
No, because I'm doing them in order. So I'm only getting into I'm in the 6th series on Saturday. Yeah,
it's so good.
I heard about it, but I have not watched it yet. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, it was so good. I was happy for Minnesota because again, they're players. Honestly, Atlanta's the same way, but they're just players that just keep their heads down and they grind, and to have a little bit of success and vindication, I thought, I don't know, I felt good for them. And then into the final, obviously Dallas won 3-2 over Minnesota. And even those matches, I broke down the hard point and kind of like the last 20 seconds of the hard point on Hackney Yard, where Dallas wins that easily. They easily win 3-1. And Katie, you'll see this too when you actually watch it, but it was map 4. And it was like a string of events of like 8 things that had to go wrong for Dallas to lose as it rotated from P4 to P5 on the second set of rotations. And it just happened that it did. And like, so like Hugh dies, and then Clayster dies, and then Empire leaves or Illy leaves where he was sitting, and then Clayster, it was just like, it was just a perfect storm in order for Minnesota to take that game 4, and it ended up all being for nothing because Dallas still ended up winning 3-2. But yeah, I mean, the finals here, it was out of this world. So Kingdom, I guess since you've watched it, maybe, I don't know about spoilers here, but I think you're still muted, but how are you feeling?
I wanted to go first. I was really excited about that. So, and, it's too late for Katie, spoiler alert. I'm sure she's heard from way too many people and watched Twitter. And I just tweeted like, so you know how sometimes you tweet just like a word and you know that your timeline, if you're at an event, you know your timeline knows what just happened. Like you can tweet a name. You can be like, study, or you can type a name of a player and an exclamation point, and people will look at that tweet the next day and go, I know exactly what he was talking about. Or
like Simp in Black Ops 4.
Oh my God.
When he got the 3 spikes back to back, you're just like, Simp. Yes, exactly that.
The timeline was dead. So the timeline during the Atlanta Minnesota series was, I mean, lit, for lack of a better terminology.
I saw it.
Oh, I literally, I just typed, I was like, I don't know what to type. I just typed yo with like 7 exclamation points. And then 2 maps later, I'm typing like more exclamation points. And it was such an amazing, like, that is Call of Duty at its finest, is what I saw in that series. And I'm like, I've watched Call of Duty for 10 years. Like, and that was some of the best Call of Duty, and the casting was phenomenal.
Who was casting it?
I think that one was that Ben and Chance?
It was Ben, right? Yep.
Ben and Chance. The finals were good too. Like Maven was in his bag, but Ben and Chance, it
was phenomenal.
The way they worked together, Chance recognized, there was a moment where Chance starts talking at the end of the HP. Chance starts talking and he realized, okay, wait, this is going to be a Ben moment. And he literally passes it right back to Ben within a sentence or two. And Ben takes the rest of the map. And he just goes back and forth. And the score is back and forth. And you can't tell who's going to win. And Minnesota, and it was just, that was, and I've never seen until that moment, I've never seen what I thought was worry on Simp's face until that search and destroy at the end of that best of 5.
Wow.
When they were down in maps.
That gave me chills. Just you saying that. I was like, wow.
I was
Simp was not the normal Simp in that map 5.
A little bit. Like, Simp is looking like.
He was.
Okay. Simp is
all right, Minnesota. And here's what I want to say. You know, we had Ashley on last week, and everybody's like, you know, telling me and Icon we're crazy for talking about Minnesota could win this and they can make it to the finals and all this kind of stuff. I've been saying this team could make it to the finals since every pro player and pro team, including Faze, said preseason. Simp in an interview was like, there's us in Chicago. There's probably around Dallas. He's like, but Minnesota definitely is next if there's a next team. He's like, and then everybody else is on a different level. But us 4 are kind of like this. We're up here. Minnesota's right below the 3 of us. Minnesota, in my opinion, and I'm going to say it for lack of, I just have to say it. They are going to prove, in my opinion, that they don't just belong behind those 3 teams. They've proven they can beat Faze. They almost reverse swept Dallas. Dallas had to regain. Clayster, after that 4th map, was like, and he just shaking his head and everybody's looking at him. And what Clayster said is that Rambo had to literally walk over and help the team regain. If Rambo, think about if Rambo wasn't there, would they have carried that into the search, and would Minnesota be champions right now? Like, you never know. Like, those little moments. But that series, I'm sorry that I'm talking about that series so much, but that series, if I rewind to the Atlanta and Minnesota one, that series was some phenomenal Call of Duty. I guarantee you, Katie, when you watch it, you will respond physically to what's happening. There was a moment, my family's over here playing War. They're playing I Declare War, and they kept asking me if I wanted to join the game. I'm like, okay, I got 2 more series to watch. You know, it's almost over. And I literally, at one moment, I'm watching and I'm taking notes, and then I was just like, what is happening? And I literally just jumped back, and I was like, because I couldn't tell, and Benson was casting. Anyway, sorry for overselling it for you, Katie. You're gonna watch it.
No, I believe you. I believe everything you're telling me. You have sold me. You have.
Good,
I can't wait to watch. And I think I could watch a Call of Duty league that was just Minnesota and Atlanta playing each other all the time, constantly.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there is something about Minnesota, their playbook, their chemistry, their players, how they play the game, that is the counter to Atlanta Faze and how they play this game. You know, everyone talks about how hyper aggressive Atlanta is, how fast they are.
Yeah.
And then you have whatever magic something that was sprinkled into the cauldron of the Rokkr that they come out and counter Atlanta so beautifully. And I agree. I think Minnesota is, I cannot wait to see what Minnesota does, because that team is absolutely incredible. The organization is incredible. I was able to fly out there a couple of weeks ago to hang out with them and see their HQ. And I can say, from being there with them, from Midnight and everyone else, their mentality behind the scenes is top notch. How they treat the players, how they treat each other, how they view the environment of the Minnesota Rokkr and what they want to build as a franchise.
And their branding.
Yes. And I think it all funnels into what you see from those players, because are they the hottest shit on the block that you've known about and they have 1 million followers? No. Nope. Are they incredible? And I bet some of those, I bet some of those players will sooner rather than later. I want to watch Minnesota and Atlanta all the time.
Would you say, Katie, I've called them the best staffed team in the league? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
To an extent?
Yes.
Okay. I think Brent, I don't remember his name, the guy that is basically runs the team, and then Ashley, who helped hire everything. I think they are the best staffed. You've heard nothing but good things from other teams. From the best teams in the league, Minnesota's really good. I really think what Minnesota's doing is really good. Brian Saint is a great coach. They have a great coaching staff. What they're doing with content is a win. The hosting of the first event was a win. What other team have we seen that's doing watch parties? Mm-hmm. They're doing watch parties and
they're so proactive. They're so proactive.
Awesome.
They're building they're going to have a city that eventually, within the next 2 to 3 years, they're going to have a contingency of thousands of people that will be in love with an actual Call of Duty team that their city has. And it does something to the fuel of these players that are capable of, Alex, Asim, like all these guys are capable. And I would just say they play Call of Duty well. When you said you could watch them play Atlanta, they both play really good, solid Call of Duty. It's
so different, but both so good.
Yeah. And I don't know where I would put Dallas, honestly. I watched Dallas play and I'm like, okay, Clayster is a factor. I'm just going to have to say that. But what are they doing that is causing them to have so much success, to pull off reverse sweeps against London, to beat these teams, to get into the finals, to win when their backs are against the wall? It looks like Minnesota's coming in hard and then they win. Like, I don't know what Dallas does. Atlanta, I can see that the basis of it is their talent. It's their skill, their raw skill in the game. With Minnesota, I believe it's their entire, what they stand for. They're a team, period. Everybody's a part of the team, not just the players, everyone. They're building an actual brand rather than a roster. And so, but with Dallas, maybe it's Krim, who I guess now Clayster tweeted out is not only the winningest player in chips, but he's now the winningest player in money. He passed Karma by $65 or something. Katie, go ahead.
Say, I think maybe the secret sauce for Minnesota was those jackets that they wore in their intro video at the Minnesota homestand, because I got to see those jackets in person, and let me tell you, they are glorious. They are glorious, and I think some of that mojo from
wore
those
off on them.
amazing jackets soaked into them, and they were like, we are as fly as these jackets are. So, but no, I just, from spending some time with them at their headquarters and getting to know Brett and Ashley and everyone else, they're just phenomenal. As you know, Kingdom said, an icon. Like they're just, they're top notch, and they're building something incredibly special.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's such a cool story because it just seems like their culture is right. Seems like the way that they play, they're just playing the game the right way. But just to kind of recap these last two finals here, Katie, these map 4s are some of the best Call of Duty you'll ever watch. Like the Minnesota Atlanta map 4, this hard point, like it rotated back to Ruins P5 and Celium's there, but like it's over. Like this map is over.
Yeah.
Celium gets a 3-piece. And then he gets 4.
I saw the tweets about Cell. I saw them. I was like, I don't know what's happening because I'm seeing this event, but I want to know.
And then he gets 5 and 6 and 7. And he just goes on this insane spree. And that's what like held Atlanta in that match so long. And then they just had to commit too many resources. And when it rotated, it is what it is.
Celium?
Yep, we are. Celium.
So I don't mean to just, and I'm sorry, chat, I don't mean to just brag on this team, but I was impressed by Minnesota. I've never seen a team with that level of resiliency when you are being pushed by arguably the best team in the game, and Celium is literally keeping your entire team for 2 full pushes off of a hill, and they still won that map. Like
Minnesota, their composure.
Like they are resilient. That's what they're resilient.
It's insane.
They just don't stop playing their brand of COD. No matter what you do, the team that's going to consistently beat them is the team that can figure out what is, because I mean, they're the only team that's consistently beat Faze, right? Faze has lost 7 maps, and 5 of them were to Minnesota,
right?
I believe.
Yeah.
And so,
yes. 5 of the 7 are to Minnesota.
Yeah.
So this team has figured out, we just got to play our brand of Call of Duty. I don't even think they're countering Faze. I think they're just
slowing it down. Yeah.
We got to play Minnesota. And when we need to fry, we can fry. But positioning is important. All this. And then when GodRx is sniping like he's sniping, I mean,
I love watching him snipe.
He's so good.
I could never watch Kismet snipe again and be happy. I want to watch God every time. Like, I love Kismet. You know, like, Kismet is my friend, and I love him, and I'm a huge cheerleader for him. But if I ever see him pull out a sniper on Arklov ever again, I will lose my mind. But GodRx, I'm like, is it hard point? I don't care. Pull out a sniper. Just do your thing. Do whatever. Go for it. It's great.
And then just to set the tone for you real quick on that map 4, that Hackney Yard hard point between Dallas and Minnesota. Dallas has complete control of the map. It's ticking up. It's like 240, 242, 243. They get 5 down. Minnesota spawning completely over by P2, opposite side of the map. And you think this is done. Like there's no way. And then they just string together a gun battle here. And then they hit Clay with a nade. And then and then Illy leaves top heaven. And it just like, it's unbelievable. To be able to spawn out like that and still keep your heads and still believe that you have a chance when you have to think 99 times out of 100, there's no way somebody comes back in a moment like that. It was so good. So
oh my God, I can't wait.
I don't think there's a team that has shown me in the league that they would come back from some of what Minnesota was put up against in this tournament. Against Faze and against Dallas. I don't see another team that has the composure to handle it. There's teams that have the skill, but I don't know if there's a team that has the composure when you're getting pieced like that. And people are already writing a narrative that you're not the better team. You know what people normally do? They fall in line. They're like, you know what? The peanut gallery's correct. We're not as good. And it happens in your mind, of course. But instead, they put Faze on their heels. Like, I've never seen Faze on their heels. That was just it was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal.
What I think you've got to, in terms of Minnesota, you got to talk about Brian Saint as well. Because I've listened to, and they've been in some of the videos that Rokkr have put out, but his speeches to the team are incredible. And so you got to give, just as we give Crowder credit for what he did last year with 100 Thieves and what he's doing with Atlanta, you got to give a massive shout out to Brian Saint for what he is doing and helping Minnesota achieve. I think he is very integral to the composure and the teamwork that you see out of Minnesota.
Hot take. Brian Saint is definitely in position to get Coach of the Year, depending on placements for Minnesota.
Ooh, I like that hot take. I think I could agree with that hot take, sir.
Everybody's looking at Crowder and saying automatically he's it. And I'm like, well, you can't just always, because his team is frying everybody, automatically say it's Crowder, he's the best. You know, I don't think you could say Rambo is the best coach because his team just won. You know, like he knew when to step in and talk, though, and that was important for them. They wouldn't have won that last map. However, I think Saint building the consistency he's built and being a little more closed off, I guess, than Crowder, who's playing with the, you know, break time boys and making hard points and all this kind of stuff, and has a world championship and is a little more known. I think Saint is going to do his talking with his gameplay, with his team's gameplay. And I think at the end of the year, we might be like, okay, wait, the Rokkr won just as many tournaments as Chicago and Faze and Dallas. This is not an easy pick. I think who wins champs is going to matter a lot. And
for sure.
This Rokkr team can get better. That's what's scary.
Sorry, Chief wanted to come say hi.
I was going to say, do I sense a little one needing some attention?
So, yes, he was starting to eat the blinds behind me, and I was like, don't you dare. Like, I'll come baby you, so come here.
He's like, I want to be on stream, please.
Yes, this is Master Chief. He's my little nugget.
What a
named
name.
After that Master
That's
Chief.
The best name ever. That's the best name.
Sorry, I apologize. That totally broke it up, but I was just like, he was going to start eating and breaking things if I didn't give him love.
I think that an okay intervention or an okay change in direction in our show, I think Halo is always acceptable. If you ever want to talk about Halo, especially Combat Evolved or Halo 2, you can just in mid-sentence you can talk over it.
Guilty Spark. Oh, when the music changed and you're like, whatever is happening in this mission is gonna scar me forever. I love wait, did you ever hold on? So on Guilty Spark, did you ever jump on top of the Pelican you initially start the mission from and get above the map, and then you run all the way to the back and you can find a Marine who's gone insane and he has a rocket launcher and he's just sitting there mumbling things? Yeah, you can get up onto the top of the map. It's great. I would highly recommend that you load a Halo Combat Evolved up. So you drop it in that Pelican, jump on the Pelican. As it raises up, you can jump onto like the top of the cliff. You run all the way to the back, and there's going to be an insane Marine with a rocket launcher.
Wow.
Well, I
learn something new every day.
I got you.
I just got schooled on the game that changed my life. I thought I knew everything. I thought I could recite the talking parts of that game. Like literally verbatim from beginning to end. Like I remember when they when he gives him the weapon, it's like, here's the weapon, I don't keep it loaded. And then that's like my favorite. I just get excited when I get that little pistol and then turn the corner and then all right, we just start shooting. I got to play it with sorry, this is Katie's fault. Anybody that wants to play
I'm a monster, I'm sorry.
My son, when he turned 12, we allowed him to play shooting games, including Call of Duty. But one of the things before he turned 12 that I let him do is he played through the entire Halo Combat Evolved with me when he was 11. On Christmas, we let him do that. And me and him just grinded it out. And it was, I played through that game with probably about 10, 12 people. Me and Goalie were supposed to play through it on stream, but I never finished it. But playing through it with my son was just amazing. It was nostalgic. And it was just like every scene, I'm like, okay, the Covenant dropships are going to start coming in right now. There's going to be one over there. You run over there. If you go to that ship, see that little white thing? That's health. And inside there's going to be grenades and bullets. And it's just like, it's my game. And to be able to walk through it with my son was amazing.
And the first time you encounter a hunter, don't worry. It's going to be as horrible as you think.
Yes, exactly. Oh, and you should have seen when he met the flood. That was awesome.
Oh, the flood will always give me the heebie-jeebies, always. Like when you find Captain Keys and his face is pressed up against. Oh my god, I cried. I cried when I found him like that. I was like, Captain Keys, no.
I mean, it's like what a cinematic experience that you can never get back. You know, like you can't really repeat doing that again. You're just playing the game and you're like, I mean, Halo just did it right. Anyway, we got a few more minutes before we end the show, and I have a whole bunch of questions about Katie and all that kind of stuff, but I do not believe we talked about Warzone at all. Am I tripping?
Ooh, we did not.
Oh, we didn't.
Okay, so I just want first impressions, thoughts, and I'll start with Katie and slide to Icon. But what like Warzone dropped today? The embargo's done, so there's 7,000 YouTube videos on it. I went and watched Spratty. He's my favorite, one of my favorite YouTubers, because I love sniping. I went and watched his Warzone vid, and it was pretty cool. I'm excited to play it tomorrow. Unfortunately, I was telling Goalie I work in gaming, so my boss, we've already been talking about this in our Slack chat, and I don't know how I can convince him that I'm live and streaming and working at the same time. So I'm pretty much going to have to wait till like 8 p.m. or something to stream.
Oh.
But I have a lot of work to do tomorrow anyway. And I'll stream after everybody else, after all the large channels stop. You know, I'll start picking up their scraps or catch a host or something. But I wanted to know your guys' first impressions. Just what
Don't
you think
steal all my thunder, Katie.
from what you've seen.
I literally could not care less about plunder. And
yeah.
I swear, if you can get streaks in the battle royale, I am flipping my desk. I'm going to IW and I am screaming at them. Like, just please don't. Can I do the F word one time?
Sure, go ahead.
Please don't fuck this up too. Please. I'm so excited for it. I'm so excited for this battle royale, and I just feel like I'm gonna get my lollipop that I was so thrilled about, and then I'm just gonna drop it into a puddle. And I can't wait. I'm gonna be optimistic. I'm gonna be optimistic. Yeah. I think it's gonna be great. I'm gonna play it tomorrow. It's gonna be awesome.
Yay! Go ahead, Icon.
So, if there's one negative, I think Katie just laid it out there nicely for us. It's out of the way because you feel like by the end, everybody's going to have so much money. So, like those kill streaks are purchased through money, that everybody's going to have so much money that if you can buy precision airstrikes and you're in like the 5th circle and it's all really small, there's just going to be airstrikes everywhere. And that's something that I think a lot of people are worrying about. But I'm super stoked for this. I love the fact, the biggest thing for me is I love the fact when you kill somebody, the loot just falls onto the floor like it does similar to Fortnite.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like Blackout where you have to go through and scroll through all these menus and you're laying down and So I like that. I also like the fact that there are different colored rarities with your guns. So you know that like if you have a white M4 and you see a blue one, then you can just switch over and pick the blue one. I think that simplifies things. I also like the fact that with those rarities, all of the attachments are just set. So if you kill somebody, it's not like you have an extended mag here and a quick draw there and an ACOG here, and you have to go through and pick up what you want. I kind of like the fact that it's just streamlined and everything's there, and you can just pick up whatever rarity you want, and that's the one that you can roll with. And the last thing, obviously, I'm really excited for this, but the last thing is I like the fact that you don't have to worry about healing. So you don't have to worry about having med kits and, bandages and all that. You just heal over time. The only thing you have to worry about is having like those armor replenishers. So like you have 3 slots of armor, your armor goes down, you just pop 3 of those real quick. And that's the only healing you really have to deal with. So I think they did a really nice job in just streamlining everything. I think it's going to make the game faster. You're going to want to play faster. You don't have to worry about looting. You don't have to worry about healing. And I'm really excited for it. I'm hoping that, it's not a flop. I don't think it will be. It seems like it'll be really cool, but I'm excited to grind, man. I'm going to be streaming this all the time. So I can't wait.
I stream, which is weird what I stream because I stream COD Mobile, and I stream the BR in the evenings. Got a nice little community. and I've had a lot of fun with it. The BR on that game is a lot of fun. It's similar to Blackout, but I think better, more Call of Duty feeling, more multiplayer feeling. You can do first person or third person on that one. But when I think about this game and I've been looking at it, it's not a traditional BR. Merc had his concerns were that they're trying to do too much. They're trying to change Battle Royale too much, and they're making it. But I can't imagine if you win a 150 player game, like, you know, and you've been in the gulag once or twice, like, I would imagine that would be a huge deal. And the amount of content is going to be ridiculous. Imagine someone being in the gulag, and you know how before you fight, you watch someone else fight. Well, what if that person was your teammate? And so on stream, you're watching, like for you, Katie, let's say on stream, you're watching Study in a 1v1.
Oh, he's got that. I'm not worried about that.
Well, if he wins it, he goes in the game, but then he has to wait to see if you're going to win your 1v1 after he wins his 1v1.
Yeah, we don't lose those. We don't lose those. We got it. We got it. I've never been more confident in my life. We don't lose those.
We clutch those. That's it. And I think that it's going to be, I think that the game is going to be, I think it's going to be amazing. I think it has a chance to do something big this year. I think people are crazy. I saw one tweet that was asking what's the biggest BR going to be this year, and they had that as like 80-something%, and Fortnite's like 9%. I'm like, well, you can't ever sleep on this Fortnite game.
It just hangs around.
Throw money at it. It becomes, it doesn't go away. I love the look of it. I love the feel of it. I love that it's going to have that multiplayer feel. I just hope that they don't add too much and make it, you know, I mean, I don't know if it's skill based. I don't know if, you know, streamers are going to get mad eventually because, and I'm a streamer, but I don't know if people are going to get mad eventually because, you know, it's so super sweaty. I can't ever win a game. You know, I've never gotten past top 19 or something. Like, you know, you're putting a lot of people in the game, and depending on if you can't replenish your health, you can't sit in the storm. I saw a clip about that. You can't sit in the storm.
Storm's brutal.
And res up or anything, you just die. And so you have to stay out of the storm. You got to pay attention. There's people dropping in from all around you. It's 4 times the size of the Blackout map, somebody said.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like enormous, I guess.
Massive. And I guess there's also rumors that the max it's going to go to is 200. It's going to start at 150, but it's going to go all the way up to 200 people. So I just think it's going to be bananas. I think the gulag is a good idea because it lets people respawn, kind of. But I don't know if I like the weapon thing. I don't know what you guys think about the fact that you don't ever get attachments or anything. You just pick up weapons as is.
I do kind of like it for the streamlining. I will agree that I don't. I think in some aspects miss like when you got a gun exactly how you wanted it, but at the same time, I'm not going to miss the amount of time I allotted to trying to do that. Like running around this house and going around the porch and then going into this store and then going upstairs and trying to see if I can find all these things. Like sometimes that was fine, but it's also nice to just be like, oh, gold gun lit, let's go.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off. There's things I like and dislike about both of them, but it's so hard to judge without, you know, playing it myself yet.
I'm pretty positive there's some sort of drop where you can go and you can pull in like your own custom created class. Like you can set up classes that you want to pull in. I'm fairly positive I saw something like that in the BR, there's like a drop. You can go, you can create like classes beforehand before you go in, and you can pull in your M4 with your red dot and ghost and whatever perks you want. So that could potentially, like, if you want a certain class with a certain gun with a certain sight, you can look for those and go make that happen. One other thing that I'll mention real quick is Ramby said in the chat, I love the fact that you start with a pistol too. So no dropping in and punching people, and like if you drop in and there's somebody next to you and you both got pistols, like let's see what happens.
The hit rank is gonna be hot trash, but whatever, it's fine.
Yeah,
I've honestly I I think they borrowed some of what they've learned from the Call of Duty Mobile BR. You drop in with a pistol when your teammate revives you. When you're on a revive flight, you drop in and you always have your pistol. And I've won matches like that. Like my teammate gets downed, but I'm dropping in so we don't lose the game. And then I've used my pistol, and the other person that's weak, they may be getting an adrenaline or whatever, and I kill them. And so I guess before we go, we got like a couple minutes, but before we leave, do we have the standings, goalie? Okay, if we can put the standings on the screen real quick. And what I want you guys to do as we close the show out is look at the standings. And if you were doing power rankings, what would you change in the standings? Like, who would you move if you were doing actual power rankings? And now we all know that at this point, everybody's played the same amount of matches. So this is our league. This is where everybody's at. What would you change if you were doing power rankings, or would you leave it in this order? And I'll start with Icon.
The top three, I mean, I don't know. You could essentially make a case for Chicago, for Dallas, or for Atlanta to be number one. So I feel like just with map overall, with like record overall, it has to be Atlanta or Chicago just for their win-loss records. I know that Dallas is coming off a win, but they've also looked pretty bad in previous ones. So, I mean, who knows if there'll be some consistency there. So I don't know, maybe I kind of like the way that it is, honestly. I still think that Atlanta has a leg up over top of Chicago, and then Dallas just prove it a little bit more, get that win-loss record up a little bit higher. And then after that, Minnesota would obviously be 4. It's kind of insane that even now we're still not really talking about Minnesota in the top 3, given what they've been able to do for the first 3 or 4 events. But I don't know. There's just something there that's sticking. For 5 and 6, I kind of go back and forth with Paris and Florida, just because if that Florida roster was set and Pristini was in there and they were playing the way that they played before, I think they would be a clear 5. But since he's not, maybe that gives a little bit of an edge towards Paris. And then after that, I think London is where they need to be. I agree with OGLA right there. I agree with Seattle. I think Toronto is probably the worst team. So I might go like LAG, New York, and then Toronto. Toronto just hasn't proved outside of what Methods has done, because Methods has been phenomenal. But LAG
over New York, did you say?
LAG, then New York, then Toronto. Yeah. So, and again, there's so many storylines here, because the subs for LAG, before they made those subs, I mean, even with the subs, they took OGLA to map 5. I mean, so they're showing that they can compete, whereas New York really hasn't done that much recently. I mean, they lost to Dallas, lost to Florida. They were 0-2 this last weekend and they were out. So, yeah, I don't know. I would probably put Toronto at the bottom. So my 8 would be OGLA, 9 would be Seattle, and then LAG, New York, and then Toronto. That's how I'm feeling. Katie?
I would keep the top 4 exactly as they are, and I'm gonna look at Florida as if Pristini is still starting. So I'm just gonna go off of that assumption. So I keep the top 4 as they are. I toss up London and Florida as 5th, 6th. I feel like I want to see a little bit more out of both of those teams before I decide where they fall, but I would put Paris in 7th.
Wow.
And then I agree on Optic and Seattle in 8th and 9th, but I would do Gorillas, Toronto, and then New York as my 10, 11, 12. Every time I look at New York, I'm just sad. And a lot of the time when I look at Toronto, I'm sad, but sometimes I'm happy. And honestly, in terms of Gorillas, I am very excited to see more of Blast playing. Hopefully he continues to be in that starting roster. I would like to see more from him, and I'm hopeful for them. I think that's my biggest thing with why I'm putting Gorillas 10th and then Ultra and then New York, is that I look at that Gorillas roster and I have hope. Like, I want to see what Vivid and Spark can do. I want to see what Blast can do, especially when all of them synergize with each other. But yeah, I would just say toss up 5th, 6th for Florida and London, and New York, you're just going to stay right there. Right there.
Right at the bottom.
Okay. So for me, the first comment I want to make is there's not a lot. Whoa. Chief
it's
is,
the blinds.
yeah.
The blinds. So I'm want to mute myself and yell at my cat while you talk.
Okay, can we just watch Katie talk to her cat? This is funny.
I said, and I quote, home dog, you gotta stop, you gotta chill. He's doing it to get my attention. So continue. No. This is your time, not Chief's time. So give me
So here's my question. Chief did create a whole conversation though that lasted like 10 minutes. So I thank you, Chief, for adding to the content. But although I would make minimal changes, and I'm not going to go through the whole list, the fact that there's not many, and this is standings, I'm going to keep saying it because pro players, coaches, owners, analysts, commentators, podcast hosts all talked for Minnesota and then the next two events about how these points didn't matter and the standings weren't important and they weren't that big of a deal. And honestly, and then here's the other narrative. Online scrims don't matter. What happens online doesn't matter. Dallas is onliners, this and this and that. But if you wrote based on how teams were playing preseason, if you wrote the power rankings, some of these would move around, like New York and Optic, but Dallas. Optic was one of the worst teams scrimming preseason. Like Optic was, people were putting them at the bottom of the power rankings. And so all I'm saying, I guess, is that while I'm laughing at Katie's cat.
I'm paying attention.
That looked like a death stare. Like
okay, his tail. His tail is how you know he's up to it. Good.
So I honestly am impressed that for the most part, our top four are exactly the way they lined up in the preseason, except people were saying Dallas could be number one. But anybody that was smart and looked at these rosters, they knew when it got to LAN, Dallas was going to be below Faze in Chicago because they had the lowest amount of LAN experience in COD. And so I'm amazed that while everybody says scrims don't matter and online doesn't matter, those are the four teams that were better than everyone else preseason, and they obviously are better. And I would do what Katie did, except I would do London, Florida, Paris, and then I can't put New York at the bottom. I believe in these guys, because it's power rankings, and I believe at the end of the day, when everything shakes up, LAG is going to be your lowest ranked team in the league. Toronto has way too much potential. They just got to close out. If they would have closed out against Chicago, it would have been a different narrative for them completely. Chicago wouldn't be in second in points. They'd be like in fourth or fifth. And who knows where Toronto would be. They could be up towards the middle. And so power rankings are now legit. And something that I think it was Chance said on some other show I was watching, and it makes sense. He said, to the outside world, power rankings do matter. How do you know if you're someone coming new into Call of Duty? How do you know who is the big dog in town? You don't know that Chicago used to be Optic. You have no idea. People are still tuning into Call of Duty like, when does Optic play? And then when Optic plays, they're like, where's Scump? Because they haven't watched Call of Duty in a couple of years. And so as franchising brings things back, I think the content that all of us content creators are making, there's 1 million podcasts a week. What ESPN is doing, ESPN Esports with their interviews at every event, even DeSerto's coverage, like everything is adding to the storytelling of what's going to, I believe, be an amazing year.
And I love that. Because it always felt like to me, there was this huge lack of content for viewers in the community to chew on when it wasn't a match. So I 100% everything you just said, I love it, because that's how you keep this community engaged and you grow it. Give them a wealth of things to engage with when the tournaments aren't happening.
Sorry, my son is asking me if I want to watch Toy Story 4 with them.
Wait.
Our show is literally about
Toy Story 4 is a godlike movie, and the answer is yes, you do want to watch it. Yes.
Wonderful. I'll be tweeting about how awesome it was when this is over.
Wait, have you not watched it yet?
I haven't seen it. No, I haven't.
What? Yo, okay, wait. Look, Call of Duty is great, but you have to watch Toy Story 4, and then you have to tweet about it so I know what you think.
I will. And I don't have a choice. If I don't watch it today and Warzone is available tomorrow, I'm not watching anything. So
that's fair.
You better watch it now.
I'm going to work and play COD tomorrow. That is the plan. Work, play Call of Duty. Like on the weekends, I watch Call of Duty and I work. Now I'm going to work and play Call of Duty. thank you guys so much. What a wonderful show. Sorry if my mic just made a whole bunch of noise. I just banged with my shaker on the table. Thank you guys that have been in the chat for hanging out. Thank you, Katie. You've been an awesome guest. A lot of fun. Thank you, Icon, as always, for being cooler than me with your lights in the background.
He does have very pretty light.
They're nice, man. I gotta up my game because
Ooh.
What color do
I
we
like
want?
your mood lighting.
Odd
What
flex,
color do we
bro.
want?
Like, what is this? God,
I'll stick with blue for now.
Icon's flexing on us, Katie.
Let him flex. Hey, let him flex. Do your thing. Man.
More power to you, bro. But I appreciate all of you guys. Appreciate you, chat. Again, not gonna announce who the guest is next week. You guys will just have to. Well, you won't have to tune in. I'll announce it on Friday, as I always do. I'll announce next week's guest. But thank you guys for continuing to tune in. This will be on my YouTube and Icon's YouTube as soon as it's out. And we'll tweet them out, and you guys can go watch it. We will eventually be on, before you guys ask, iTunes and Apple and all that kind of stuff. I know that most people that are a part of podcasts these days, they don't watch them, they listen to them. But we're getting the name, ironed out and all that kind of stuff. And when we get all that dealt with, we'll put it up, and you guys can watch
Thank you so much for having me. This has been an absolute
thanks for coming
pleasure.
on. It was awesome.
It's been fun. All right, guys, we will see you next week, same time, same place, 7:30 Eastern. Unless you want to come hang out in the evening and join my my evening crew, watch me stream Warzone tomorrow. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Bye.